Thank you, Presiding Officer. I also begin by wishing Eleanor Whittam a quick recovery from COVID. Now, as every speaker today will testify, Scotland has a deep-rooted, desperate and deadly relationship with substance abuse. Scotland also has a severe problem with organised crime. These are intertwined. These are inseparable. Yet organised crime and its culpability in relation to our nation's tragic death toll is a subject that's rarely spoken about in here. For reasons that I cannot fathom, the SNP government rarely shows any sense of urgency or even understanding about the scale and scope of the harm inflicted by these parasites. Parasites who prey on our most vulnerable, parasites who use firebombs and firebombings to inflict terror, parasites who contaminate society with their dirty money, and parasites who have zero respect for the rule of law or for the sanctity of human life. Yes, the chronic issue of drug addiction must be treated as a public health emergency, as the government motion states. You will not get an argument out of me or my colleagues on that point, but as Sue Webber said, the Scottish Government cannot accept the way in which the government motion undermines the role of the justice system. Public health or criminal justice. It's really not an either-or. It is both public health and criminal justice. A robust and well-funded justice system is absolutely critical. To think otherwise is not only naive, but dangerously so. Now, one of the lines peddled by zealots who demand decriminalisation or even legalisation of all dangerous narcotics is that the so-called war on drugs is lost. Like King Canute failing to hold back the tide, they argue that drug trafficking can never be fully eradicated, so must therefore be tolerated and accommodated. It's a specious argument, glib and immature, and the devastation that this would cause is quite hard to imagine. The message that societal normalisation of heroin, crack cocaine and other drugs would send to our young people would be, I believe, unforgivable. And any politician who argues for what would become a narcotics Wild West is mistaken and misguided. They also do a disservice to Police Scotland and the National Crime Agency, who work tirelessly 24/7, 365 days a year to tackle the gangs peddling misery and death. Gangs that dupe the media, even some MSPs, by posing as honest businessmen or, worst of all, anti-drug campaigners. Scotland's organised crime groups number more than 100 and are mostly based in the communities I represent. They are keenly watching the direction this government is taking. They are rubbing their hands at the SNP's weakening of criminal justice. Look at places elsewhere in the world which now regret the failed experiment of liberalisation. Places where crime has risen and aggressive drugs gangs have flourished, not vanished. I will.
Paul Sweeney.
I thank the member for giving way on that important point. He is correct that organised crime groups are a cancer in our communities and should be robustly challenged at every level structurally. Does he recognise, however, that there are interventions such as medicated-assisted treatment, heroin-assisted treatment, that can in some instances be effective at diverting revenues that would otherwise flow to illicit supply chains into more controlled and ultimately beneficial outcomes?
Russell Findlay, I can give you the time back.
Yes. I'm not the only speaker today who will point out the breathtaking brass neck of this government. SNP ministers declared a public health emergency while inflicting severe cuts to addiction services. Shameful. They also took their eye off the ball, as Nicola Sturgeon herself admitted, while drugs deaths more than doubled. Shameful. Who dithered and delayed about the flow of drug-soaked mail into our drug-infested prisons. Shameful. Who set up countless talking shops while refusing to back my party's Right to Recovery Bill to give addicts the treatment they need. Also shameful. And most shameful of all, who manufacture fights with the UK government to distract from their own pitiful record. This government claimed that UK-wide drugs laws prevented them from decriminalisation. Not true. They spent years griping that the UK government was blocking drugs consumption rooms. Also not true. De facto decriminalisation for drugs possession in Scotland has in fact long been in place. When the Lord Advocate formalised this 2 years ago, standing right there, she said the option to prosecute must remain in place. Dorothy Bain understood the folly of allowing drug dealers to dodge justice by claiming personal possession. So I wonder if the Drugs Minister can explain why she now thinks the Lord Advocate is wrong. Shame on the SNP for using drugs deaths as a weapon in their tiresome constitutional obsession. Presiding Officer, they have been rumbled. They must stop blaming others and they must stop making excuses. They must start accepting responsibility and start taking action. Back right to recovery, stand up to the drugs gangs, support our police, listen to Scotland's drug-ravaged communities numbed by grief, and please spare the people of Scotland from an out-of-touch political class which is abjectly failing in its duty of care. Thank you.